Hello everybody and welcome back to the AMD Radeon Extravaganza Qualifier. My name is Slowwall, joining me, Master Dalk. We're now here with our second best of three. This time, we have SteAdfaSt and Zero. Master Dalk, how are you doing today? Well, how are you doing right now?
I'm doing good. These two, they are actually within the top 8 of the Toronto scene, so I'm looking forward to this match. They should be able to put on a good game, and it's going to be a ZPT here at Game 1. I'm going to be starting up on Echo. So, for right now, I'm wondering, SteAdfaSt is a bit more of a defensive, very methodical player. Zero, he throws curveballs at me, so I'm not even going to try predicting what he wants to do this game, so we'll have to see. Of course, the last time we'd seen these two play, I don't think was very recently. Or, they played during the group stage last TorCraft, and I can't quite recall who had actually won that match, but I believe it was SteAdfaSt that had won. Speaking of SteAdfaSt, we're going to be spawning on top of him. He has a blue Zerg on the top left of Echo.
On the bottom left, we have our Red Terran being played by Zero. Now, you mentioned before that SteAdfaSt is a more methodical player, which is interesting. Every time I think Zerg, I think very aggressive. I think Zergling Rush. I mean, you know, they invented the idea of a rush. So, how does one play Zerg methodically in a matchup like this?
Well, SteAdfaSt, what he tends to do is go 3 hatch before pool, like quite a bit, and that's a very good start to playing methodically. It immediately puts you into that situation where I have a ton of larvae, I'm going to have an amazing economy to start off the bat, so you have the incentive to go into into that hive tech type of army, but you know it's a very reactive kind of style, because you can't just do that on your own. You have to make sure that your opponent isn't going to try to see that and then rush you. Zero is going to be throwing down a barracks. We'll have to see if he throws down a refinery, and it looks like he will. So Reaper, very high possibility, as there is even like the special ledge ramp for the Reaper, but could also very well be leading into 2 Marines, going into, say, Marine Drop, maybe some Widow Mines, maybe Hellion run-bys as well.
Hellions would be really good, especially for early game, from what I understand. Flamethrowers being particularly useful against at least Zerglings. But like you mentioned before, SteAdfaSt, he's a very reactive player, so he's going to wait, like you mentioned, he's going to wait and see as to what Zero is going to do. In that vein, so far, you've been right on the money. SteAdfaSt building a second hatchery. It's about halfway finished right now, and he's continuing to just get the minerals up. He's building a spawning pool right now, but he doesn't have anything for Vespian gas right yet. He's going straight for the minerals as hard as he possibly can. So, yeah. It seems dangerous to do that though against a potential Reaper rush, which is what it's about to happen.
Well, you know, 150 minerals can also throw it in a queen, get that ranged type of unit out, and I wouldn't be surprised once that spawning pool finishes up, we see a queen enter the production tab, as we've got quite a few minerals banked up for our Zerg player already, and there we go, the queen starting up on the main hatchery, and the natural expansion is also finished up here, so some extra larvae is thrown into the mix for SteAdfaSt.
Yeah, but not until this Reaper gets a chance to say hello to all of his friendly drone buddies. In it comes, it's going to start doing some damage. It's moving around, it's deciding who to go after. Never mind, it sees Zerglings and decides to book it immediately. A couple more Zerglings coming out, it's going to go ahead and poke the Reaper. The Reaper is going to do its best to poke right back. It's dealing a decent number on these Zerglings, but the Zerglings don't really care. They're cheap, they're inexpensive, and they're on creep, so they heal very quickly. A bunch of damage coming out on that drone. The drone's just going to back off. Zerglings going after this Reaper. None of the Zerglings dead yet, neither is the Reaper. They're just bouncing off one another, and in comes the Queen. That's going to be that Reaper's signal to go find someplace else to poke at, as there's not really much that the Reaper can do against the Queen. There's just no way it can go toe-to-toe.
Yep. And for right now, the Reaper thought it was going to go check for a third, but actually it's going to run right back towards the natural. Queen already on the bottom of the ramp. And though on the flip side, Zero, he's got his natural up and going. He's also throwing down a third command center here after the factory, so he is going to be going for a bit more of the economic sort of style here. And SteAdfaSt actually is throwing down 2 more gases. He's going to be going up to... Oh, those are actually his first 2 gases, putting them on the natural. Now that's a bit of a nice deception tactic, is that way if the Reaper comes in towards the natural, again, which is far more likely than it coming into the main, then he'll see 2 gases, but he'll probably think that those are his 3rd and 4th, and that would completely throw out the window what Zero was thinking SteAdfaSt was going to be going for, but a 3rd base has been thrown down now.
And the 3rd base is going to be really good. It's going to give them a lot of minerals. But, oh, Zero probably saw that, but not before the 2 queens saw him. And he's going to jump right into a couple of Zerglings and into another queen. Down goes the Reaper for actually nothing. Those are the same 4 Zerglings that we saw before, at least as far as I understand it. There's been 1 unit lost, 1 Reaper versus 1 nothing, really. Resources-wise, so far, it's still very much in the Zerg's favor. That Reaper did not seem effective at all. Like, at all. Like, it did very little.
It wasn't cost effective, but it did allow Zero to see, oh, your main gases still aren't up yet, so you definitely aren't going to be going for a very quick Spire. You aren't going to be going for a quick amount of Roaches or a quick amount of Hydralisks. You're going to be on Zergling tech for a while, and it also clues off. Well, not even clues off. He saw the 3rd base. He knows that Zero can sit back for a while and just do his own thing, which also makes him much more comfortable with this 3rd orbital command center that he's got, as that means he's probably not going to be seeing too much in terms of aggression straight away onto that 3rd base, should he go out and put it down.
Yeah, it seems like both players kind of understand what the other one's doing. Zero noticing that the Zerg players are just going very, very safe, putting down a lot of creep tumors. There's plenty of creep all over the place, so that way they can move quickly across this top left corner of the map, and that'll probably only continue to increase in size. The Zerg player building a Baneling nest and 2 evolution chambers in a very strange place. I'm not exactly sure if I've ever seen evolution chambers built so close to the front lines before. But the Baneling nest being built, what kind of strategy is the Zerg player going to be going for at this point?
Well, he's going for the 1-1. He's got a Baneling nest. Probably going to be throwing down a Spire within the next 2 or 3 minutes. Does he? He does have a lair. So, yeah, he's probably going to be going for some Mutalisk, Zergling, Baneling for right now. And there we go. The Spire gets thrown down. Centrifugal hooks, which is Baneling speed, getting thrown down on the Baneling nest. And with 1-1, especially for the melee units, those Banelings and those Zerglings are going to be so much more effective.
And on the Terran side of things, lots of Marines being built up. We've got some medevacs to back that up, and a couple of Hellions as well. They just destroyed the spot, like I guess the silo right next to their one expansion, and left the rubble there. So now they've got 1 wall blocking it off, making it a bit safer. Now the Terrans are making their way across. They're going to come across the creep, and as soon as they do, SteAdfaSt is going to be able to see that and be able to maneuver accordingly. Now, what's interesting, SteAdfaSt has 3 queens just kind of sitting here on this creep. Oh, and a lot of Zerglings coming in. They are starting to tear apart the Terran front lines. They're not going to be able to get out, all of them, to be able to get out of there. Terrans just lost a couple of units. Not as many as you'd think, but yeah, that's... Oh, the queen's just doing a bunch of damage on that Hellion. Hellion's going to go right down. That's going to be another unit lost to the Terrans. So that, overall, was a really good ambush out of the Zerg player, out of SteAdfaSt there. I don't think that Zero really saw that one coming.
I don't think so, but, you know, SteAdfaSt, he's very much a player that, again, likes to go for the methodical kind of styles. And to do such a thing, you need a very large creep spread, which is why he has so many queens. So often I've seen him go for 2, 3, sometimes even 4 queens, just out on the map, leave them roaming around, have the creep tumors going down. And as we can see, like, the creep is already reaching the halfway mark onto the map. And he's going to be going up to the 4th base soon. He's got his Mutalisks. The first couple sets now are out for SteAdfaSt. So the aggression is going to start ramping up very quickly here for our Zerg player.
So what does the Mutalisk allow the Zerg player to really do in this case? Like, what's the strategic importance of having Mutalisks, especially at this stage of the game?
Well, the Mutalisks can then go in on a different base, while the Zerglings and Banelings slow down the front side. So you keep the Terran busy at their front of their line, at the front of their bases, and then the Mutalisks can come around in towards the back, kill off worker lines. But also they can come in, deal with the medevacs, and these Banelings, so many of them, only Marines remaining, no medevacs left. And these Banelings, still so many more left over, going to be rolling right on in. These Marines not able to split effectively enough. The Mutalisks and the remaining Banelings coming in on towards that third base. All these SCVs getting blown to shreds.
What a very powerful attack. That was a blitz if I'd ever seen it, and it's not quite done yet. Zerglings are going to do their best to just harass and see what's going on here. Unfortunately for SteAdfaSt, this area is completely blocked off with a bunker and a couple of supply depots. There's no way the Zerg player's getting in through there. They're going to just be contented with taking out all of what's left in that expansion that Zero had. But that was a huge hit to a lot of what Zero was working with. That's a massive hit to his minerals and to his resource collection in general. Do you think that the Terrans can come back out of this, or are they going to be able to, or are they going to crumble underneath the weight of the momentum that SteAdfaSt is currently accruing?
I feel like Zero will be... He has the ability to do this, and, you know, he's doing the right thing. I was going to say, start getting some counter-aggression. You have those medevacs, go drop some Marines across the map, especially while the Mutalisks were out of position. But right now, these Mutalisks, they caught up to this medevac fairly quickly. Don't know how long it's going to be staying alive for, as this drop gets cleaned up so quickly. And right now, SteAdfaSt, he's throwing down... He's getting so many more Zerglings, which will eventually, of course, lead to the Banelings. But Zero right now, he just needs to kind of sit tight and stay strong in the defenses that he has. Getting the third base, though, is very crucial. He is going to be getting some Thors and Hellbats, and that is a very good choice. And even going to be getting Infernal Pre-Igniter, which will help so much with the Hellbats versus these Zerglings.
And right now, it's Zero sees what he's up against, but it's not going to be quite enough. His Marines, his Marauders are getting cleaned up very quickly by the chasing Zerglings. And the Mutalisks are also going to help support them. The Mutalisks now taking out this command center that was recently built to try to take over that expansion again, but there's no way that the Zerg player is going to let that just happen. They're going to make sure, SteAdfaSt is going to make sure that Zero does not get access to that expansion again if he can help it. And that's going to make things very difficult for Zero. Zero going to be very behind in terms of mineral production. And the Banelings trashing the supply depots and the barracks. They're going to start moving in. They've created an opening for the rest of SteAdfaSt's army as they start to clean up the SCVs and the buildings surrounding Zero's main base. The Mutalisks providing supporting fire and taking out any aerial units that were left over as medevacs. The medevacs being chased away, and that's going to be the GG coming out of Zero. As SteAdfaSt takes a very steadfast approach to his Zerg play and ends up taking the first game in this best of 3. That was really neat to see, though. I like to see that kind of play with the queens and everything. How is that a very frequent thing for Zerg players to have this marauding queen force just spread creep all over the place?
Not so much Zerg players, but more a SteAdfaSt and I guess kind of a Toronto thing. We really like having our creep go out as far onto the map as possible. So SteAdfaSt, you know, he had the ability to get his reinforcements across the map in lightning speed, and with that, so many Zerglings, so many Banelings as well, just able to really capitalize on the fact that Zero Sim City did not allow for a lot of room, so Marine splitting was not going to happen. Even if Zero was the god at Marine splitting, he just didn't have the room to be able to do it to the measure that he would have needed to do it, as SteAdfaSt constantly had up to 40 Banelings in those engagements, and you can only Marine split so much when you have 40 Marines versus 40 Banelings.
On top of that, it seemed like the aggression that came out of SteAdfaSt, once he had gotten a slight upper hand from Zero losing his momentum, he just kept it up, made sure that he was constantly harassing and being aggressive with his Zerglings and his Banelings, and once he got the Mutalisks out, it was just, like you mentioned before, a very methodical process of just taking out the weak points in Zero's defenses whenever they showed up. Instead of going and trying to attack the supply depots and bunkers, went straight for the third expansion, took it out completely, made sure that it stayed out of commission, and then got enough banelings to be able to break open the front door and start flooding the Terran gates. But that's going to be your game 1, SteAdfaSt taking it. Zero now going to be doing his best to try to bring this to a game 3, but we'll have to see what happens in game 2. Do you think there's going to be any change in strategy out of either of these players? You mentioned before that Zero is the kind of person that throws curveballs, that kind of thing. Do you think that we're going to see that out of Zero right now, or do you think that he's going to try to do that again with the Reaper Rush?
I'm thinking that Zero will stick to his guns. The Reaper was able to allow him to get a lot of reconnaissance. It was just a couple of decisions here and there that he could have made that would have been a bit better. Maybe, you know, getting some more missile turrets, getting ahead in his upgrades as well. He was falling a bit behind in that in the early game, but we'll have to see. Coming into game number 2, the map is actually going to be Coda here, so it's a bit of a different map on Echo. The bases are much more farther apart. The bases are also much bigger, and like the last time we saw this map, very much having open space, something a Zerg will love.
Something the Zerg will love, but as mentioned before, in that previous map, there wasn't enough room to Marine split the Baneling's effectiveness. So now room. Zero probably hoping that he can do that do that mitigating strategy to better effect. At least he hopes. We'll see whether or not SteAdfaSt lets him, and if SteAdfaSt decides to go for something of maybe a bit more aggressive. But that's really up to this game 2 to really decide. We'll see what the players end up deciding for themselves.